Greig Sheridan is a fan of buyer agents. He used one 20 years ago, so when he and partner Glenn were looking for a home in 2021, they enlisted the services of an agent who proclaimed himself the #1 buyer's agent in Australia. But his most recent experience has him questioning whether he should use it again. Four Corners may reveal that founder of buyer agency had extensive ties to founder and manager of sales agency from which couple bought their home. This relationship raises questions about how effectively perceived conflicts of interest between buying and selling agents are managed and whether Australian buyer agents regulation is fit for purpose. An early red flag in 2021, Mr. Sheridan and his partner decided to sell Sydney to finance an earlier-than-expected retirement. They set their sights on Newcastle in anticipation of better prices and a major change of sea. They decided to use a buyer's agent. Buyer's agents have been in Australia for over 20 years, although they are more commonly used for more luxurious properties. But as property prices soar and competition among potential buyers intensifies, more consumers are turning to buyer's agents to represent their interests and help them make the biggest financial decision of their lives. When Sheridan asked around, one particular buyer agency stopped coming Henderson Advocacy, run by 26-year-old Jack Henderson. "We learned that the real estate agent suggested we call Hendersons," he said. "Perhaps we naively went straight to them." Jack Henderson is the director of Henderson Advocacy. Mr. Sheridan was initially offended by what he described as a danger sign. The agency agreement that Henderson Advocacy was asked to sign contained what is known as the No Humiliation Clause. It forbade them to make any statements or publications that could adversely affect the reputation of the representative. "Then we couldn't leave less than a brilliant 5-star Google review," Sheridan said. "I immediately responded to Jack, 'Nup, we're disconnecting, we won't continue.'" Mr. Henderson eventually agreed to remove the clause. Greig Sheridan is at home with his partner Glenn. Stephanie Tonkin of the Consumer Action Law Centre said she doesn't believe such clauses should be included in buyer agents' contracts. "A no humiliation clause would be unenforceable anyway," she said. ACCC has taken action against businesses with non-derogatory provisions and acknowledged that they are violating tort law provisions. Henderson Advocacy found a home for Mr. Sheridan and his partner in the Newcastle suburb of Adamstown. The property was being sold by a sales agent at PRD Presence, which also trades as PRD Newcastle. They made an offer and it was accepted. Upon deal, Henderson Advocacy received a commission from them on the purchase price of property. What they didn't know until Four Corners contacted them was that one of the co-founders of Henderson Advocacy is also the founder and director PRD Newcastle. "This seems completely inappropriate," Sheridan said. "The whole point of working with a buyer's agent is to be our agent, be able to talk through all real estate bull, and know and work through all the strategies seller's agent will use against us. We pay them a huge amount of money, we definitely want them to be on our side." PRD Newcastle is a franchise co-founded and managed by Mark Kentwell, a leading sales representative in the region. Mr. Kentwell also co-founded Henderson Advocacy with Jack Henderson in 2020. He is not a director or shareholder of the company and told Four Corners that he did not receive any profit distributions or dividends from the company. Jack Henderson and Mark Kentwell appear together in a video on Henderson Advocacy's YouTube channel. The two men have jointly managed two other companies since April 2021: Henderson Metro Vic Party Limited and Henderson Metro Queensland Party Limited. They appear together in a number of online real estate videos, including what they describe as founder updates on Henderson Advocacy's YouTube channel. In statement to Four Corners, Mr. Kentwell said, "A strong relationship between a sales agent and buyer's agent is prevalent in the real estate industry, and the customer benefits from this relationship. The interests of each customer are still represented by the respective agents and licensees in the licensed trade in which they are engaged. Institutions. PRD Presence told Four Corners that it has complied and will continue to comply with its disclosure obligations under the Property and Stock Agents Act of 2002. Mr. Henderson declined to comment, citing the positive customer reviews Four Corners had received. Questions about business contacts. There is another layer of the relationship between Mark Kentwell and Jack Henderson. A common tactic in the real estate industry is what's known as research. Realtors rely heavily on building large databases of potential buyers to speed things up. Much of their job involves hitting phones and calling those leads. Mr. Kentwell oversees and owns another property business in Newcastle called the Growth Centre, which has developed a sophisticated style of exploration. The business is a separate legal entity from PRD, but ABC understands that its employees are given access to the PRD Newcastle database, which contains details of people with whom they have done business in past. A copy script obtained by Four Corners guides them through these searches, coaching person to ask the status of their call, bring up idea a buyer's agent, and recommend Henderson advocacy. Have you ever heard of a buyer representative? Reads the script. There is no mention of any relationship between Mr. Kentwell and Mr. Henderson. Stephanie Tonkin says the relevant relationships between businesses should be disclosed to consumers. According to Ms. Tonkin, this could be a problem. If there is no disclosure, how can a buyer know about the relationship? How will players, these companies, act in the best interest of the buyer in circumstances? Ms. Tonkin asked. Mr. Kentwell told Four Corners, my business interests and relationships are disclosed to relevant stakeholders, both in writing and orally as needed. My business I have worked with continue work with expert lawyers to ensure that all our obligations are complied with, including, but not limited our disclosure obligations under the Property Share Agents Act 2002 the Australian Consumer Law. Broader questions regarding regulation of buyers' agents separately. The growth of buyers entering the agency space has raised questions about adequacy of their oversight. One area where concerns have been raised is commission payments. Miriam Sandkula, a buyer's representative in Victoria, said it can be difficult for consumers to differentiate between qualified buyer representatives and other industry players. There are so-called real estate agents, there are consultants. Some take the word buyer's agent and misuse it, she said. The term buyer's representative is not defined in legislation in every state. So while there is no national definition of it, it leaves the door open for such people to continue to misrepresent themselves. And they are circumvented by regulatory laws. Organs do not control and direct it. Contact Paul Farrell using the Signal Secure messaging app on +6 14683505519 or Paul Farrell 1 Proton Mail. Ms. Sandkula comes from a financial services background and is uncomfortable with some advice given to her. The problem in Australia is that we don't have a governing body that regulates the real estate consulting industry, she said. It basically means that anyone can install a tile and call himself a real estate agent with no qualifications. Kate Backos, president of the Association of Real Estate Buyers and Agents, said consumers should be wary people who offer buyer brokerage services for free. In fact, we see people out there claiming to be buyers agents, when they are actually salespeople for marketers, promoters, or sales organizations, he said. If they claim their service is free, the consumer needs to understand that they are actually paying for that service. It's usually in the purchase price, which means the price has been raised, it's above market value. And because banks know what property's worth, problems arise when it's time for a bank valuation, and they usually know when commissions are involved for selling to people who selling as the buyer's agent. Kate Backos, president of the Australian Association of Buyers Agents. Ms. Backos also worries that some buyer representatives are entering the industry with insufficient training. Some take between 6 and 12 months of training to obtain a real estate broker license, while some trails allow agents to become licensed with online training in as little as 2 months. This is not just a problem for buyers agents, it's also a problem for sales agents, said Ms. Backos. This issue affects the consumer.